What's up, my people? We are here live inside of the Benny Bunker, and guess who crashed in? And he said, let's just let her rip. It's your boy, Vivek. Vivek just said, hey, let's go. I got a couple minutes. Let's go live. So why the hell not?
Good to see you, man.
How we doing, Tommy? How's Chicago treating you?
Pretty good, actually. Yeah. There was a guy outside of this tower when I came in, and it was a very warm welcome. He had like a nice giant printed poster with like "Dear Vivek" on the front of it, and it had it took a lot of my 10 truths, so he thought they were too reductionist. But there are two genders. He's like, there's no nuance to this. And he went down each of the other points. So it wasn't like I was expecting it to be a full-fledged, like in-your-face protester. Turned out he was actually just an interesting conversationalist, but he had a megaphone. He had like a whole bullhorn. And then he also had a giant, like it might be a poster the size of, like bigger than one of these signs right here. Probably half the size of this banner right here with a Dear Vivek, like a long letter. It took me like 30 seconds to read it. So some interesting conversations.
So he
Mostly fans around here, actually. But that guy was like not an enemy, but he was a conscientious protester of my message.
He wrote you a big letter?
He wrote me a giant letter on a poster.
That's that's nice. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
very,
thoughtful, right?
It was actually
Christmas card list.
it was charming. It felt warm as a welcome. I was expecting a contentious conversation.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like all that contentious. He had really tracked a lot of the things that I had said carefully. And he says, look, I just think you could approach this with greater nuance. I said, okay, let's have a nuanced conversation about climate change. That was one of his detailed ones. And so we had a nice little exchange about the impact of rising global surface temperatures. On a nice.
This is what I've always. I
love that.
Before you became this major phenomenon in 2024, you had a much more like smaller and humbler campaign, and the thing that you would regularly do is confront protesters, like not in a mean way, in like this like very kind, like why don't you come into my event? I've seen you do this, pull this move like 15 different times. Come on into my event. Like everyone's welcome here.
It's great.
Come on.
It's actually a good,
so disarming.
Well, it's a good way to go. So like 90% of the time,
I've never seen anyone do it. I've never seen anybody do it like that.
So we've had many people take us up on it, and it's gone well. Yesterday, I was in DC giving a speech about a bunch of other. It was a relatively technical issue on dismantling the administrative state, and then these guys come on stage. I don't know if you saw this. There's like 4 or 5 of them. That
Cato,
come on stage.
right?
Yeah, they start. Then they weren't in the mood for a conversation. Right? They just start stomping. Like they literally just wanted to stomp. I said, "Do you want to talk about climate change?" I said, "Nice to meet you." He wouldn't shake my hand. He wouldn't say anything. He just wanted to stomp. Until they got escorted out. So that's not useful. But the guy today, he comes with a giant poster. It looks like what you might think is a crazy person. He has like a giant megaphone in front of him. But we end up having actually a pretty decent conversation. And so then I was at Luminati's for lunch, the deep dish place, about 5-minute walk from here.
And you got real deep dish, right?
I got real deep dish,
okay.
Of course. Yeah.
Toppings? Just the cheese pie?
No,
Toppings, tomato pie?
Green peppers, onions. Yeah, garlic.
It's delicious.
It's very good. So this is good stuff. So that brings people together. But we're at the DNC, so it's a lot of people attending the convention who are there. This woman comes over. She's so excited. She takes a picture. Then she says, "Can I have a conversation?" I'm like, "Look, like how about like right after we eat lunch?" Because I wanted to focus on, my food intake. I don't want to.
You do have to sit and really focus.
I do.
On those deep dish pizza.
Yeah.
Deep dish pizza is a complicated thing to eat.
It's not a hobby, right?
Yeah,
you can even some of that. So the way
take something out of you.
So the cheese is this is more detail than people need, but like the way they make it, you got the whole crust. It's not like they sprinkle the cheese on top. They have slabs, right? So they just put in layers, and if you're getting sausage, it'll be like a slab. So it's just an entire layer. So when you're eating it, you can't. It's not a great conversational food. But anyway, I told her, okay, why don't we chat afterwards? So she comes over, and she's got this like guilt in her face. It looks like she's like doing something she isn't supposed to be doing, like she's like breaking a promise or something. And she's got all the pins. She's like, okay, look, you can see I'm on the other side. And then she stops herself. She's like, I'm here for the convention. I'm a Democrat. She's like, well, I'm not really a Democrat. I'm an independent. But I made a commitment several years ago. And so I know that I don't agree with you on everything, but I seem to really like you. So are you open to answering 3 questions for me? And then she just lists out the 3 questions. Tell me how I can get there on abortion. Tell me what you think about religious freedom. Okay, I know you're Hindu. I like that. But what about being religiously free? And I explained to her that, of course, we stand for religious freedom. And then what was her third one? Her third one was actually just kind of sad. It was a sad one because it's just related to rising cost. Everything is so expensive, and I help seniors, and they can't afford anything anymore, and they can't afford their medicine. So can you just tell me on those 3 issues how I can at least agree with somebody who believes what you do? We had a great conversation. I think I got her on number 2 and number 3 easily. Number 1, I'm pro-life. She's not. There's going to be no final meeting of the minds there. But I think the fact that we handled number 1, number 2, and number 3 in a amicable and even, if I may say, I think convincing manner, number 1 became hopefully something that isn't a unbridgeable divide. Okay, we disagree on abortion, but that doesn't mean that you want to vote for the person who's going to raise costs or somebody who's actually going to deny religious freedom. So here's the thing. I opened it with her and I said, if you're, if you're free to, we live in a country where you're free to marry who you want without the government standing in your way. She says, thank you for saying that. I said, but it also means that you shouldn't have to officiate a wedding that you don't want to officiate. She said, well, of course, I stand for freedom. So I said, well, that's exactly what much of the Democratic position is. She's like, well, it's just some radicals who think that's not a Democratic position. I said, actually, you look at the cases that have found their way all the way up to the Supreme Court, it absolutely has been forced on people by courts, which is in conflict with religious freedom. And she just wasn't aware of it. So anyway, one of the things I learned from the campaign is I think we miss the opportunity sometimes to actually have an open conversation with, yes, you're going to get 20% of people who want to just stomp all the time, and we're not going to make any progress with them. But with the rest of them,
you got a 2-year-old. So you're used to that.
Yeah, I got a 2-year-old.
Yeah, so
I'm used to stomping.
You like
you know what it's like.
just
Yeah.
throw yourself on the floor,
Yeah.
scream a little bit. Yeah, that's right.
We can handle that.
Throw the soup on the art.
That's
yeah,
right, that's right.
Okay. Glue yourself
We
to
can
the wall.
just-
Glue yourself to the wall. Every parent sees these protesters gluing themselves. Just stop oil, gluing themselves to the wall. They're
We
like,
have
I've been there.
experience.
I've
Yeah.
seen that. Actually,
Give me something I haven't seen. So anyway, it'll be fun. So later, I think you and I are going to be walking around the DNC. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so Vivek is a couple minutes away from a Fox News hit. We're gonna leave the studio. You've seen us in the studio the entire week. We're gonna leave the studio and we're gonna wander around the DNC. We're not gonna be able to carry all of this live because he's gonna have to go on Fox. But after that, we're gonna go into the DNC convention and we're gonna go live. Now, the reason we're doing this in the studio right now is you never know what happens there. It's gonna be hectic. Let's just say that. It's gonna be hectic.
I haven't been there yet.
So we're not sure how well that's gonna go. We're gonna do our level-headed best to just go live and let it rip, right? And take you guys with us into the DNC convention. So expect that, but as a safety, we're gonna have like an actual civilized conversation here. Do you find it that if you go to all these big cities, I find it that when I'm in San Francisco and when I'm in New York and when I'm in Seattle, there are these people who love this country and who love freedom, and they come running out of their offices to say hi. I feel like it's almost more right wing than like small red towns and red states. That like these people are like the people in San Francisco, they've lived. The people in the red towns and red states, they're still in sort of like Pax Americana, Norman Rockwell America. It's not as real for them as somebody who's a patriot living in downtown San Francisco. And it is remarkable to me how there are patriots everywhere. And you're describing these people in Chicago, right here in one of the bluest cities in the world, coming up to you, wanting to have conversations with you. I think that's really inspiring.
Well,
like,
actually,
it's neat.
And actually just like a lot of fans too. I mean, those are some of the slightly more, maybe contentious or at least opposite-sided interactions.
Yeah.
The other one, there was actually a state senator from, I think it was North Carolina, who was visiting, and he didn't want the interaction recorded, but he's just like, we don't agree on everything, but I love you, man. And my daughter wants to ask you a question. She's a senior in high school, and it was about like where she should go to college or how she should make those
Is he a
decisions.
Democrat? Is he a DNC guy?
Yeah, he's a DNC guy. Yeah, and then we've got a bunch of people here who I met. Actually, so I invited him out today just because they became friends. You remember when I came to Chicago during the campaign, I went to the South Side, very much a Democratic region of the city, obviously has had its struggles. And we made a bunch of friends then. And a bunch of people who actually did an event with where we had some contentious interactions at the time. One of them now is like a diehard Trump supporter. He came in wearing Trump gear to the press conference that I did up here earlier today. And he brought a bunch of friends who came over and they were taking pictures with me. And these are people who, part of certainly a community last year where we had some pretty contentious interactions during the presidential campaign. So I think it's been cool to come to cities like this. I agree with you that you see it everywhere in America. I'm not even sure I would draw the broad generalization that, okay, like in the cities, they're more hardcore than other areas. I think actually my takeaway is very close, but slightly different, which is that actually it turns out that Americans, whether they live in cities or in the Midwest or on the coasts or whatever, actually aren't that different from each other. We share the same concerns. We share the same national values. Okay, maybe not everybody, but 80% of us.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of interesting. Like we try to draw these broad overgeneralizations, and Turns out that most people in this country, most, not all, a vehement minority, still wields disproportionate power. But most people share the same national values in common, and I think it's pretty cool.
Homie, I'm just saying that these guys are living in Demolition Man, right?
Yeah.
They're living in the end results, the end stages of like Apocalypse Now. And they're still patriots, they're Republicans, they're freedom-minded people, but they get to see the policies enacted, right? And so it's like depressing, the blight of South Side of Chicago or downtown San Francisco. They're like living through it. And so when they come and they see someone like you, they're like, save me. Right? Like save this city, save Seattle. Seattle was wild because we were there when Chop Chaz, you remember that when they took over? Antifa took over like the city. And made their own zone. And the neighbors were like coming out of their homes like begging people with cameras to like do something, like please help us. Do something, like save us, right? From ourselves.
Totally. And I think there's something going on in the current. And I think it's less, I think we almost in some ways create a barrier if we put the Republican wrapper around it.
Sure.
Versus just talk about it in
America first. I'm trying to like, pro freedom movement, America first, right? Joe Rogan's, is he a Republican? No, he's a freedom movement guy.
Yeah.
He's a freedom movement guy. Is Elon Musk a Republican? Freedom movement guy, I think.
And to the left,
right?
you know, and the modern Democrats, you know, they're smart, actually. You know, could say what you will about their actual ends. They swapped out Biden at exactly the correct time to try to get Kamala in just before the convention, so the election takes place within the honeymoon phase. And I'm not saying, you know, that I haven't been saying this for a year.
We got to talk about that.
Yeah.
Just I'm sorry, man. We got to talk about that because on this program, on our program, you've been saying this for years. And people laughed at you.
I said
people laughed at you on our program, on every program, and people laughed at you. You said on a debate stage with like 13 million people watching, and everybody chuckled. And Kristen Welker, she hissed at you. I watched it. I was right behind her. Like I watched it. You could hear it. And you said, "Shut up. Joe Biden's not your candidate. Who's your real candidate?" Everyone laughed, and no one's laughing now.
They cut me off when I said it. But the reality is, you want to predict these things. You're not going to be correct about 100% of the predictions, but you'll be correct about most of them.
How'd you do
Just
it?
Follow the incentives.
How'd you do it?
Literally, it's just the same way that you think about in the hedge fund world, right? It's where I got my first start in my career. Make a contrary investment thesis. How do you do it? Just follow the incentives. And it doesn't always play out, but most of the time it does. So what was the incentive of the Democratic Party? If you have them go through a primary or have a candidate that goes through a primary, if Biden said he wasn't going to run, you're going to have a weakened candidate on the other side of it. On the flip side, the later you wait, the more likely it is that you're in the honeymoon phase at the time that you nominate the new candidate. So they waited long enough, and then they weren't sure. Because whenever you want to make a decision, you want to have certainty. So they said, okay, let's have this debate. And this isn't conspiracizing. They literally said they're only going to have the debate under these conditions. The first debate takes place as the earliest ever presidential debate in recorded televised presidential debate history. Why? Precisely to test and have conviction that, okay, we're ready to move the guy out, but what if we're wrong?
Yeah.
Then they say, okay, no, we're not wrong. Let's go ahead and
so the debate was a setup.
hit the button. Absolutely.
The debate was set up. What about Biden's mental state?
Setup was a test. I mean, setup makes it sound even more grand conspiratorial than it was. It was just a test, and he failed the test.
I'll say there's not really conspiracies. There's just like
obvious.
People who aren't right just yet, aren't proven right just yet. Biden seemed worse than ever on that debate night. You do debates. You're a great debater. You got to bring your A game. It's a high intensity. It's a very high adrenaline, high intensity, high T, environment to be a good to debate correctly. Joe Biden was worse than most days that I've ever seen him. And we cover everything live.
And he has some pretty bad days,
Yeah, and so that so it makes me think that they set the dude up. It makes me think that they slipped maybe a little something. Well, melatonin, right?
Well,
all it would take is one melatonin, right?
I think
debate was at 9 p.m. Sundown syndrome.
I think that Biden at his worst is you get the normal undulations. Donald Trump actually just demolished him, and I think demolished his self-confidence early on. But even this cycle here at the DNC, right? Look at the first night. He was supposed to speak, and it was supposed to be his swan song. It's like they waited until every American goes to sleep and then trot him out. And by the way, what have they said? When he's past his bedtime, the further he is past his own bedtime, the less coherent he's going to be. And that's exactly what happened. So they wait for the entire country, including me, by the way, that night, to be long asleep, then trot him out. You see the clips the next day, and it's exactly why they said he did poorly in the debate. It was past his 4 p.m. bedtime. They said he's good from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Yeah.
And so in some ways, I think that it's not some sort of smoke-filled room type conspiracy. It's just the machine operates according to its own best incentives. And it's exactly what you saw. So the truth is, we got to understand that's the way it's going to continue to be played now forward. I think there are going to be some more shoes yet to drop, but I think it's a risk for our side. So, I mean, in the hat you're in the hat you're wearing, in the seat you're in, it makes sense to continue to, be one step ahead of the curve and understand exactly what's going to happen, analyze the situation, lay it out. Is Kamala, is Joe Biden going to remain the president for the remainder of his term or not?
Is that the next prediction?
I think that's do
you have a confidence? Do you have a confidence vector on that?
What I will tell you is, I think,
because why wouldn't they? Charlie was sitting in this chair like 12 hours ago, and he said no. He said no. They're going to let him play it out, and I say they have a free shot on goal. They have a free shot on goal. Yeah. They have a free shot on goal to get their diverse intersectionality woman president, and they don't even have to wait for an election.
Well, it would further.
Why wouldn't they just take it?
It would further advantage her in the election, right? So,
do you think so?
Well, I think there's always an incumbent advantage. The idea of people not having to make a leap to say that, okay, I can't quite see you as president, then they see you as president. You got the Oval Office to make addresses. They won't call them political speeches, but they'll be political speeches. Yeah. And, I think Kamala Harris, you want that period, if you're a Democrat, to be probably as short as possible, because the chance of her screwing something up, people understand, is probably quite high. It's why they didn't give her a ton of responsibility while she was in office. She owns the record because she owned the border. But regardless, that's something that, if you just map out the incentives, you could say predict or not. What I like to do is just map out the incentives. Are there incentives on the side of making her look as presidential as possible and to extract every competitive advantage they have in the short time before the election? I think they are. And
then she passes something like every American gets a free basketball or something.
Yeah,
right.
It's like a
special
auction, auction for votes.
Yeah, can you believe she did it? Yeah, it's amazing.
It's like bidding for.
I love my free basketball. I love it. Thank you, Kamala.
It's like The Price is Right. Like whenever you talk about the child tax credit, I'm going to go up $1 higher, right?
They'll do it. They'll give her some happy ass thing, to say that some accomplishment, something.
Yeah, and it's a good way to make yourself seem presidential, to actually show up in the Oval Office. So
you have a confidence vector on this? You think it's going to happen?
But this the point I was going to make, Benny, is I think it's reasonably likely to happen. Yeah. But the point I was going to make is, whatever they pull on the other side, I think that our biggest trap now, with this short of a time left till the election, is that we get consumed by those shenanigans, so much so that we actually forget to just remind the voters of who we are and what we stand for. Yeah. And if we do that, irrespective of what trick they pull, Kamala for Biden, who knows whether it's going to be President Kamala or not, who knows, right? The same people who told you that it was not going to be nominee Biden or nominee Kamala, that Biden wasn't going to be swapped out, now are going to tell you with the same confidence they did 6 months ago that he's going to serve out his term. My point is, none of that matters. It doesn't have to matter if we don't make it matter. It doesn't have to matter if we actually focus on just communicating to the people of this country, what do we actually stand for in the first year? Seal the border, end the rampant crime. Chicago, it's like 14 murders a day. It's like 3 rapes per hour. It's insane statistics in this city. It's like every 18 seconds, you've got a car-related theft. I mean, it's like the numbers are off the charts here.
DNC guy was robbed. Like a delegate was robbed at gunpoint.
I mean, it's just
like down the block.
It's a statistical reality, right? Yeah. And if our messages were going to seal the border, end violent crime,
they gave the robbers free vasectomies.
Restore the rule of law. Yeah. Oh, the free vasectomy thing is interesting too, right? Because it actually almost proves the point that it's not about women's rights alone. It's actually about the agenda of ceasing family formation and having children. Right. And so that almost becomes part of the agenda itself. And anyway, the point I was going to make is our risk right now. And the reason I'm not dwelling in the prediction, I have my senses of things that could happen, but I think it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant as long as we actually focus on our own affirmative vision that is independent of whichever puppet they put up.
Is this your biggest prediction? That they're going to do the hot swap for Biden while he's in office to Kamala Harris, or do you think
he's going to be swapped out?
Do you think there's something?
Now matters less.
Do you think there's something else?
You mean yet to come?
Yes, yet to come.
I think that's the biggest one that's going to be in their control.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So a lot of these things, I think that it's like you're so imagine you're a trader in the markets, right? You want volatility when you're out of the money. So I would say the poorer the polls go in Kamala's direction, the more likely they are to bet for volatility. The better the polls look, the more modulated their strategies are going to be. Right? So that's exactly what happened when they swapped out Biden. When you're out of the money, you have all the incentive in the world to play for volatility because it's not going to get worse than bad, because a lot worse than bad is still a loss. Versus if you have volatility in the other direction, you can actually eke yourself out a win. So that's what they did with the swap out of Biden with Kamala. So I think it's a function of how the polls are actually looking. If the polls start sinking for Kamala and the honeymoon phases out, I think you're going to see some wild strategies deployed. I think if it looks like, roughly like it does right now, I think they're going to be temperate in their strategy, and the furthest they might consider going is the idea of potentially, and they have the perfect logic to do it, to say that, okay, well, the health reasons that stopped him from serving, as the presidential candidate, we've made a thoughtful decision on what's best for the American people, and they'd even get to take credit for it. It would kind of make sense if they did. So I think that it's going to be a direct function of what their incentives are. And most people, most parties, most organizations act according to their incentives. Expect nothing different of the Democratic Party.
You talk about like
We should probably rock and roll, right?
Yeah. What time is
We
it?
got a little time. We got a little time.
Okay, I got
minutes.
one final one for you, because this is something that was talked about this morning. Mike Waltz, a member of Congress who's on the task force for the assassination task force.
Yes. Okay.
So he was here and he broke some big news about how many encrypted messaging devices the guy had from all these foreign countries. Germany, New Zealand.
Some of this was known, but it's really been confirmed now.
Yeah. So it's been, and they cremated the body, and it seems the timing's. I don't believe in coincidences, man. Like, so Donald Trump eats a bullet, right? Survives, becomes an icon, right? And that, like, covers of rap albums will be made out of that image. People getting it tattooed all over them. We were on the south side of Chicago. Every person told us they were voting for Trump. Every single, to a man, every single person.
That doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
So they have this like thing they can't control. Talk about something you can't control, right? But as you begin to learn more and more about that assassination attempt, I mean, you start to see some real failures that are unexplainable and unforgivable. How did that thing come about? Like, how do you view that in the greater zeitgeist of events that have been orchestrated or allowed? And then as soon as Trump survives that, Biden drops out. And I'm thinking, okay, was there somewhere deep down, was there some type of, was that a contingency plan, right? That we're going to actually kill the guy. We're going to actually kill Trump.
Well, we don't know much about this guy who
we know nothing about this guy.
It's actually
that's
shocking.
right. It's like he never existed, and they lit him on fire, Vivek.
So here's what
he's
I'll say.
Gone. The body's gone.
I think the reality is, can people agree on one thing? I mean, I don't care most Democrats here, even the ones I met earlier today, I think would probably agree on this, is the people deserve to know what the hell happened.
Yeah.
What was up with that security lapse? What was up with the guy that actually people at the rally were able to point out and see what resulted in that level of negligence? And whatever the answer is, it's not going to be great. If it's that level of negligence that exists in the Secret Service and in the Department of Homeland Security and the people who are designed to protect this country and the U.S. president, that's not a good answer. And so whatever the answer is going to be, it's obviously a failure of a high order. But here's what I'm pretty fact-driven, man. Yeah. Again, I just map out, in the case of drawing future political predictions, map out the incentives, see where they take you. In the case of what happened retrospectively, just follow the facts. And right now, we don't have those facts. And so I don't know who in Congress is leading the way, but, I suspect that after this election, people are going to try to, evade accountability. And I think that we need accountability because there was a great failure. We came within a centimeter of a national disaster. And so just tell us what the hell happened. And I think that that's what, as citizens of this country, we at minimum have a right to know. Need
to find out if this guy was acting alone. And this doesn't preclude like somebody inside of our government doing it. What if it was another nation state? If it was a transatlantic flank? We don't know. But if it was another nation state staging an assassination attempt on our boy, then we should know that. Like, that shouldn't be hidden behind some encryption or locked away in some classified file.
And
we should know that country.
Here's the case I would make to those in the government who have the general instinct of hide what you tell the public or be careful about what you tell the public. There is, for any event like this one, there's nothing that you could at this point in time tell the public that is worse than the worst of what somebody's going to imagine anyway. So just tell them the truth. Because historically the case used to be, oh, no, because then we're going to erode public trust in our government. Okay, maybe that was true when the American people were naive in like pre-1950, in whatever, before we've actually seen a lot of what we've seen. But at this point, even the argument that, no, the people can't handle it because then they're no longer going to have public trust in, let's say it was bad negligence, whatever the answer was, it's not going to be worse than what the worst of people out there are going to imagine anyway. Yeah. And so just tell the truth. And it's a radical idea for a government. And I don't say this sarcastically. It actually is a radical idea. It actually is quite a radical idea. American Revolution was radical for this reason. The idea that we, the people, create a government that is actually accountable to us, that actually just tells us the truth, and that has people who can vote out when they don't, and that allows us in the meantime to speak our minds openly and express our opinions without anybody telling us which opinions we can or cannot express. Actually, that is a pretty radical idea. And so I don't say that sarcastically, that's a radical idea. I mean, in a deeply literal American heritage sense of the word radical. If you believe in that radical idea, then yes, why doesn't the government just get to the bottom of it, be open with the public, and whether you're on the left or the right, I think that's one thing we can all probably get behind.
How are we on time?
We should probably go. I should probably go to this next thing I have.
Okay.
And then let's reconnect and walk around the convention zone. I'm going to be there.
Okay. RFK real fast.
Yeah. What about him?
Tomorrow.
We'll see what happens tomorrow. But I think that he could be, think about a guy like him. I think it could, if he comes out and endorses Trump, I think that'll be great. I'd give him full credit for that. But I also think that he's a guy who, when you think about one of his passions was the wrongs that were committed during COVID.
Yeah.
He could be an interesting guy to take a long, hard look at rectifying some of that. Because I know he has a passion for it. I don't agree with him on everything. I don't agree with him on a lot of things. But I respect that he had the courage to do things a little differently.
Yeah.
And to challenge his own party to run independently. It's not easy to do. It takes guts. And so I've met the guy a couple times, and I've told him that. At least even if we don't agree on everything, I respect what he did. And so I hope he comes out and endorses Trump tomorrow, but that's his decision to make. We'll see.
We'll see. All right. Fantastic. Okay, guys, we're going to be live at the DNC. Vivek's got a Fox hit. We wanted to make sure that we chatted a little bit with professional mics and inside of a studio so we could actually like chat and lock it in. Because we're going to go into the belly of the beast. We're going to go into the DNC. We're walking the DNC. We're going to let the cameras roll live, and we're just going to be walking around. So come with us on that. We'll go live again in about an hour, and we'll see. We'll see how many people scream, spit at, spontaneously combust next to us, and it'll be fun. So it's your boy Benny, letting her rip here at the DNC. See ya.
Truth gon' be faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. From the speeches to debates, Benny sharp like a blade, cutting through the lies, watch the truth cascade. With the warrior's heart, this man never fades. You know it's prime time when Benny invades. From saving the nation to stories untold, the Benny Show's a storm, see the truth unfold. Stay in the loop, let freedom take hold. Salting all the libs, soul never sold. It's the Benny Show, where the truth gon' be. Faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. Liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. From the speeches to debates, Benny sharp like a blade, cutting through the lies, watch the truth cascade. With the warrior's heart, this man never fades. You know it's prime time when Benny invades. From saving the nation to stories untold, the Benny Show's a storm, see the truth unfold. Stay in the loop, let freedom take hold. Salting all the libs, soul never sold. It's the Benny Show, where the truth gon' be. Faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light.